Hello, we're back with more of Deathworld by Harry Harrison. I'm going to wait for about a minute, maybe a minute and a half, and then we'll get started in earnest, just in case anyone shows up to watch live on Twitch, which, it does happen occasionally. All right, so about a minute, and then we'll get down to business. All right, let's get down to business. We're going to read part 7 and part 8, and depending on how much time I've got, maybe part 9. We'll see. All right, part 7. In the morning, Jason awoke with a bad headache and the feeling he had never been to sleep. As he took some of the carefully portioned stimulants that Bruco had given him, he wondered again about the combination of factors that filled his sleep with such horror. "Eat quickly," Bruco told him when they met in the dining room. "I can no longer spare you time for individual instruction. You will join the regular classes and take the prescribed courses. Only come to me if there is some special problem that the instructors or trainers can't handle." The classes, as Jason should have expected, were composed of stern-faced little children. With their compact bodies and no-nonsense mannerisms, they were recognizably Pyrrhan, but they were still children enough to consider it very funny to have an adult in their classes. Jammed behind one of the tiny desks, the red-faced Jason did not think it was much of a joke. All resemblance to a normal school ended with the physical form of the classroom. For one thing, every child, no matter how small, packed a gun, and the courses were all involved with survival. The only possible grade in a curriculum like this was 100%, and students stayed with a lesson until they mastered it perfectly. No courses were offered in the normal scholastic subjects. Presumably, these were studied after the child graduated survival school and could face the world alone, which was a logical and cold-hearted way of looking at things. In fact, logical and cold-hearted could describe pretty much any Pyrrhan activity. Most of the morning was spent on the operation of one of the medkits that's strapped around the waist. This was a poison analyzer that was pressed over a puncture wound. If any toxins were present, the antidote was automatically injected on the site. Simple in operation, but incredibly complex in construction. Since all Pyrrhans serviced their own equipment, you could then only blame yourself if it failed. They had to learn the construction and repair of all the devices. Jason did much better than the child students, though the effort exhausted him. In the afternoon, he had his first experience with a training machine. His instructor was a 12-year-old boy whose cold voice didn't conceal his contempt for the soft off-worlder. "All the training machines are physical duplicates of the real surface of the planet, corrected constantly as the life forms change. The only difference between them is the varying degree of deadliness. This first machine you will use is, of course, the one infants are put into." "You're too kind," Jason murmured. "Your flattery overwhelms me." The instructor continued, taking no notice of the interruption. "Infants are put into this as soon as they can crawl. It is real in substance, though completely deactivated." Training machine was the wrong word, Jason realized as they entered through the thick door. This was a chunk of the outside world, duplicated in an immense chamber. It took very little suspension of reality for him to forget the painted ceiling and artificial sun high above and imagine himself outdoors at last. The scene seemed peaceful enough, though clouds banking on the horizon threatened a violent, Pyrrhan storm. "You must wander around and examine things," the instructor told Jason. "Whenever you touch something with your hand, you will be told about it, like this." The boy bent over and pushed his finger against a blade of the soft grass that covered the ground. Immediately, a voice barked from hidden speakers. "Poison grass. Boots to be worn at all times." Jason kneeled and examined the grass. The blade was tipped with a hard, shiny hook. He realized with a start that every single blade of grass was the same. The soft green lawn was a carpet of death. As he straightened up, he glimpsed something under a broad-leafed plant. A crouching, scale-covered animal whose tapered head terminated in a long spike. "What's that in the bottom of my garden?" he asked. "You certainly gave the babies pleasant playmates." Jason turned and realized he was talking to the air. The instructor was gone. He shrugged and petted the scaly monstrosity. "Horn devil," the impersonal voice said from midair. "Clothing and shoes no protection. Kill it." A sharp crack shattered the silence as Jason's gun went off. The horn devil fell on its side, keyed to react to the blank charge. "Well, I am learning," Jason said, and the thought pleased him. The words, "kill it," had been used by Bruco while teaching him to use the gun. Their stimulus had reached an unconscious level. He was aware of wanting to shoot only after he had heard the shot. His respect for Pyrran training techniques went up. Jason spent a thoroughly unpleasant afternoon wandering in the child's garden of horror. Death was everywhere, while all the time the disembodied voice gave him stern advice in simple language, so he could do unto rather than being done in. He had never realized that violent death could come in so many repulsive forms. Everything here was deadly to man, from the smallest insect to the largest plant. Such singleness of purpose seemed completely unnatural. Why was this planet so alien to human life? He made a mental note to ask Bruco. Meanwhile, he tried to find one life form that wasn't out for his blood. He didn't succeed. After a long search, he found the only thing that, when touched, didn't elicit deadly advice. This was a chunk of rock that projected from a meadow of poison grass. Jason sat on it with a friendly feeling and pulled his feet up. An oasis of peace. Some minutes passed while he rested his gravity-weary body. "Rot fungus. Do not touch." The voice blasted at twice its normal volume, and Jason leaped as if he had been shot. The gun was in his hand, nosing about for a target. Only when he bent over and looked closely at the rock where he had been sitting did he understand. There were flaky, gray patches that hadn't been there when he sat down. "Oh, you tricky devils!" he shouted at the machine. "How many kids have you frightened off that rock after they thought they had found a little piece?" He resented the snide bit of conditioning, but respected it at the same time. Pyrrans learned very early in life that there was no safety on this planet, except that which they provided for themselves. While he was learning about Pyrrus, he was gaining new insight into the Pyrrans as well. The end of Chapter 7. Give me a short break. Okay, that was a short one. I think this one's a bit longer. But anyway, let's get to it. Days turned to weeks in the school, cut off from the world outside. Jason almost became proud of his ability to deal death. He recognized all the animals and plants in the nursery room and had been promoted to a trainer where the beasts made sluggish charges at him. His gun picked off the attackers with dull regularity. The constant, daily classes were beginning to bore him as well. Though the gravity still dragged at him, his muscles were making great efforts to adjust. After the daily classes, he no longer collapsed immediately into bed. Only the nightmares got worse. He had finally mentioned them to Bruco, who mixed up a sleeping potion that took away most of their effect. The dreams were still there, but Jason was only vaguely aware of them upon awakening. By the time Jason had mastered all the gadgetry that kept the Pyrrans alive, he had graduated to a most realistic trainer that was only a hair's breadth away from the real thing. The difference was just in quality. The insect poisons caused swelling and pain instead of instant death. Animals could cause bruises and tear flesh, but stopped short of ripping off limbs. You couldn't get killed in this trainer, but you could certainly come very close to it. Jason wandered through this large and rambling jungle with the rest of the 5-year-olds. There was something a bit humorous, yet sad, about their unchildlike grimness. Though they still might laugh in their quarters, they realized there was no laughing outside. To them, survival was linked up with social acceptance and outstanding. With social acceptance and desirability. In this way, Pyrrus was a simple black and white society. To prove your value to yourself and your world, you only had to stay alive. This had great importance in racial survival, but had very stultifying effects on individual personality. Children were turned into like-faced killers, always on the alert to deal out death. Some of the children graduated into the outside world, and others took their places. Jason watched this process for a while before he realized that all of those from the original group he had entered with were gone. That same day, he looked up the chief of the adaptation center. "Bruco," Jason asked, "how long do you plan to keep me in this kindergarten shooting gallery?" "You're not being kept here," Bruco told him in his usual irritated tone. "You will be here until you qualify for the outside. Which I have a funny feeling will be never. I can now field strip and reassemble every one of your blasted gadgets in the dark. I'm a dead shot with this cannon. At this present moment, if I had to, I could write a book on the complete flora and fauna of Pyrrus and how to kill it. Perhaps I don't do as well as my 6-year-old companions, but I have a hunch I do about as good a job now as I ever will. Is that true?" Bruco squirmed with the effort to be evasive, yet didn't succeed. "I think, that is, you know, you weren't born here and—" Come, Jason said with glee. "A straight-faced old Pyrrhan like you shouldn't try to lie to one of the weaker races that specializes in that sort of thing. It goes without saying that I'll always be sluggish with this gravity, as well as having other inborn handicaps. I admit that. We're not talking about that now. The question is, will I improve with more training, or have I reached a peak of my own development now?" Bruco sweated. With the passage of time, there will be improvement, of course." "Sly devil," Jason waggled a finger at him. "Yes or no now? Will I improve now by more training now?" "No," Bruco said, and still looked troubled. Jason sized him up like a poker hand. "Now let's think about that. I won't improve, yet I'm still stuck here. That's no accident. So you must have been ordered to keep me here. And from what I have seen of this planet, admittedly very little, I would say that Kirk ordered you to keep me here. Is that right?" "He was only doing it for your own sake," Bruco explained, "trying to keep you alive." "The truth is out," Jason said. "So let us now forget about it. I didn't come here to shoot robots with your offspring, so please show me the street door. Or is there a graduating ceremony first? Speeches, handing out school pins, sabers overhead?" "Nothing like that," Bruco snapped. "I don't see how a grown man like you can talk such nonsense all the time. There is none of that, of course, only some final work in the partial survival chamber. That is a compound that connects with the outside, really is a part of the outside, except the most violent life forms are excluded. Even some of those manage to find their way in, once in a while." "When do I go?" Jason shot the question. "Tomorrow morning. Get a good night's sleep first. You'll need it." There was one bit of ceremony attendant with the graduation. When Jason came into his office in the morning, Bruco slid a heavy gun clip across the table. "These are live bullets," he said. "I'm sure you'll be needing them. After this, your gun will always be loaded." They came up to a heavy airlock, the only locked door Jason had seen in the center. While Bruco unlocked it and threw the bolts, a sober-faced 8-year-old with a bandaged leg limped up. "This is Griff," Bruco said. "He will stay with you wherever you go from now on." "My personal bodyguard?" Jason asked, looking down at the stocky child who barely reached his waist. "You might call him that. Griff tangled with a sawbird, so he won't be able to do any real work for a while. You yourself admitted you will never be equal to a Pyrrhan, so you should be glad of a little protection." "Always a kind word. That's you, Bruco," Jason said. He bent over and shook hands with the boy. Even the 8-year-olds had a bone-crushing grip. The two of them entered the lock, and Bruco swung the inner door shut behind them. As soon as it was sealed, the outer door opened automatically. It was only partly open when Griff's gun blasted twice. Then they stepped out onto the surface of Pyrrus, over the smoking body of one of its animals. Very symbolic, Jason thought. He was also bothered by the realization that he hadn't remembered to look for something coming in. Then, too, he couldn't even identify the beast from its charred remains. He glanced around, hoping he would be able to fire first himself next time. This was an unfulfilled hope. The few beasts that came their way were always seen first by the boy. After an hour of this, Jason was so irritated that he blasted an evil-looking thorn plant out of existence. He hoped that Griff wouldn't look too closely at it. Of course, the boy did. That plant wasn't close. It's stupid to waste good ammunition on a plant, Griff said. There was no real trouble during the day. Jason ended by being bored, though soaked by the frequent rainstorms. If Griff was capable of carrying on a conversation, he didn't show it. All Jason's gambits failed. The following day went the same way. On the third day, Bruco appeared and looked Jason carefully up and down. I don't like to say it, but I suppose you are as ready to leave now as you ever will be. Change the virus filter nose plugs every day. Always check boots for tears and metal cloth suiting for rips. Medkit supplies renewed once a week. And wipe my nose and wear my galoshes. Anything else? Jason asked. Bruco started to say something, then changed his mind. Nothing that you shouldn't know well by now. Keep alert, and good luck. He followed up the words with a crushing handshake that was totally unexpected. As soon as the numbness left Jason's hand, he and Griff went out through the large entrance lock. Alright, we'll do Chapter 9. Just need another short break to drink more water. Damn, it's hot. Alright. Chapter 9. Real as they had been, the training chambers had not prepared him for the surface of Pyrrus. There was the basic similarity, of course, the feel of the poison grass underfoot, and the erratic flight of a stingwing in the last instant before Griff blasted it. But these were scarcely noticeable in the crash of the elements around him. A heavy rain was falling, more like a sheet of water than individual drops. Gusts of wind tore at it, hurling the deluge into his face. He wiped his eyes clear and could barely make out the conical forms of two volcanoes on the horizon, vomiting out clouds of smoke and flame. The reflection of this inferno was a sullen redness on the clouds that raced by in banks above them. There was a rattle on his hard hat, and something bounced off to splash on the ground. He bent over and picked up a hailstone as thick as his thumb. A sudden flurry of hail hammered painfully at his back and neck. He straightened hurriedly. As quickly as it started, the storm was over. The sun burned down, melting the hailstones and sending curls of steam up from the wet street. Jason sweated inside his armored clothing. Yet before they had gone a block, it was raining again, and he shook with chill. Griff trudged steadily along, indifferent to the weather or the volcanoes that rumbled on the horizon and shook the ground beneath their feet. Jason tried to ignore his discomfort and match the boy's pace. The walk was a depressing one. The heavy, squat buildings loomed grayly through the rain, more than half of them in ruins. They walked on a pedestrian way in the middle of the street. The occasional armored trucks went by on both sides of them. The mid-street sidewalk puzzled Jason until Griff blasted something that hurtled out of a ruined building towards them. The central location gave them some chance to see what was coming. Suddenly, Jason was very tired. Griff, this city of yours is sure down at the heels. I hope the other ones are in better shape. I don't know what you mean talking about heels, but there are no other cities. Some mining camps that can't be located inside the perimeter, but no other cities. This surprised Jason. He had always visualized the planet with more than one city, There were a lot of things he didn't know about Pyrrus, he realized suddenly. All of his efforts since landing had been taken up with the survival studies. There were a number of questions he wanted to ask, but asked them of somebody other than his grouchy 8-year-old bodyguard. There was one person who would be best equipped to tell him what he wanted to know. "Do you know Kirk?" he asked the boy. "Apparently, he's your ambassador to a lot of places, but his last name..." "Sure, everybody knows Kirk, but he's busy. You shouldn't see him." Jason shook a finger at him. "Minder of my body you may be, but minder of my soul you are not. What do you say? I call the shots, and you go along to shoot the monsters. Okay?" They took shelter from a sudden storm of fist-sized hailstones. Then, with ill grace, Griff led the way to one of the larger central buildings. There were more people here, and some of them even glanced at Jason for a minute before turning back to their business. Jason dragged himself up 2 flights of stairs before they reached a door marked Coordination and Supply. "Kirk in here?" Jason asked. "Sure," the boy told him. "He's in charge." "Fine. Now, you get an ice cold drink or your lunch or something and meet me back here in a couple of hours. I imagine Kirk can do as good a job of looking after me as you can." The boy stood doubtfully for a few seconds, then turned away. Jason wiped off some more sweat and pushed through the door. There were a handful of people in the office beyond. None of them looked up at Jason or asked his business. Everything has a purpose on Pyrrus. If he came there, he must have a good reason. No one would ever think to ask him what he wanted. Jason, used to the petty officialdom of 1,000 worlds, waited for a few moments before he understood. There was only one other door. He shuffled over and opened it. Kirk looked up from a desk strewed about with papers and ledgers. "I was wondering when you would show up," he said. "A lot sooner if you hadn't prevented it," Jason told him as he dropped wearily into a chair. "It finally dawned on me that I could spend the rest of my life in your bloodthirsty nursery school if I didn't do something about it. So here I am." "Ready to return to the civilized worlds now that you've seen enough of Pyrrus?" "I am not," Jason said, "and I'm getting very tired of everyone telling me to leave. I'm beginning to think that you and the rest of the Pyrrans are trying to hide something." Kirk smiled at the thought. "What could we have to hide? I doubt if any planet has as simple and one-directional an existence as ours." "If that's true, then you certainly wouldn't mind answering a few direct questions about Pyrrus?" Kirk started to protest, then laughed. "Well done. I should have known better by now than to argue with you. What do you want to know?" Jason tried to find a comfortable position on the hard chair, then gave up. "What's the population of your planet?" he asked. For a second, Kirk hesitated, then said, "Roughly 30,000. That is not very much for a planet that has been settled this long, but the reason for that is obvious." "All right, population 30,000, Jason said. "Now, how about surface control of your planet? I was surprised to find out that this city within its protective wall, the perimeter, is the only one on the planet. Let's not consider the mining camps, since they're obviously just extensions of the city. Would you say then that you people control more or less of the planet's surface than you did in the past?" Kirk picked up a length of steel pipe from the desk that he used as a paperweight and toyed with it as he thought. The thick steel bent like rubber at his touch as he concentrated on his answer. "Well, that's hard to say offhand. There must be records of that sort of thing, though I wouldn't know where to find them. It depends on so many factors." "Let's forget that for now, then," Jason said. "I have another question that's really more relevant. Wouldn't you say that the population of Pyrrus is declining steadily, year after year?" There was a sharp twang as the steel snapped in Kirk's fingers, the pieces dropping to the floor. He stood over Jason, his hands extended towards the smaller man, his face flushed and angry. "Don't ever say that!" he roared. "Don't ever let me hear you say that again!" Jason sat as quietly as he could, talking slowly and picking out each word with care. His life hung in the balance. Don't get angry, Kirk. I meant no harm. I'm on your side, remember? I can talk to you because you've seen much more of the universe than the Pyrrans who have never left the planet. You're used to discussing things. You know that words are just symbols. We can talk, and no, you don't have to lose your temper over mere words. Kirk slowly lowered his arms and stepped away. Then he turned and poured himself a glass of water from a bottle on the desk. He kept his back turned to Jason while he drank. Very little of the sweat that Jason wiped from his sopping face was caused by the heat in the room. I'm sorry I lost my temper, Kirk said, dropping heavily into his chair. Doesn't usually happen. Been working hard lately. I must have got my temper on edge. He made no mention of what Jason had said. Happens to all of us, Jason told him. I won't begin to describe the condition my nerves were in when I hit this planet. I'm finally forced to admit that everything you said about Pyrrus is true. It is the most deadly spot in the system, and only native-born Pyrrans could possibly survive here. I can manage to fumble along a bit after my training, but I know I would never stand a chance on my own. You probably know I have an 8-year-old as a bodyguard. Gives a good idea of my real status here. Anger suppressed, Kirk was back in control of himself now. His eyes narrowed in thought. Surprises me to hear you say that. Never thought I would hear you admit that anyone could be better than you at anything. Isn't that why you came here? To prove that you were as good as any native-born Pyrran? Score one for your side, Jason admitted. I didn't think it showed that much, and I'm glad to see your mind isn't as muscle-bound as your body. Yes, I'll admit that was probably my main reason for coming. That and curiosity. Kirk was following his own train of thoughts and puzzled where they were leading him. You came here to prove that you were as good as any native-born Pyrran, yet now you admit that any 8-year-old can outdraw you. That just doesn't stack up with what I know about you. If you give with one hand, you must be taking back with the other. In what way do you still feel your natural superiority? Jason thought a long time before answering. I'll tell you, he finally said. Don't snap my neck for it. I'm gambling that your civilized mind can control your reflexes, because I have to talk about things that are strictly taboo on Pyrrus. In your people's eyes, I'm a weakling because I come from off-world. Realize, though, that this is also my strength. I can see things that are hidden from you by long association. You know, the old business of not being able to see the forest for the trees in the way. Kirk nodded agreement, and Jason went on. To continue the analogy further, I landed from an airship, and at first all I could see was the forest. To me, certain facts are obvious. I think that you people know them too, only you keep your thoughts carefully repressed. They are hidden thoughts that are completely taboo. I'm going to say one of them out loud now, and hope you can control yourself well enough to not kill me. Kirk's great hands tightened on the arms of his chair, the only sign that he had heard Jason talk. Jason talked quietly, as smoothly and easily as a lancet probing into a brain. Human beings are losing the war on Pyrrus. There's no chance they can win. They could leave for another planet, but that wouldn't be victory. Yet if they stay and continue this war, they only prolong a particularly bloody form of racial suicide. With each generation, the population drops, until eventually, the planet will win. One arm of Kirk's plastic and steel chair tore loose under the crushing grasp of his fingers. He didn't notice it. The rest of his body was rock still, and his eyes fixed on Jason. Looking away from the fractured chair, Jason sought for the right words. This is not a real war, but a disastrous treating of symptoms. Like cutting off cancerous fingers one by one, the only result can be ultimate death. None of you seem to realize that. All you see are the trees. It has never occurred to you that you could treat the causes of this war and end it forever. Kirk dropped the arm of the chair, clattering to the floor. He sat up, astonished. What the devil do you mean? You sound like a grubber. Jason didn't ask what a grubber was, but he filed the name away. Call me a Pyrran by adoption. I want this planet to survive as much as you do. I think this war can be ended by finding the causes and changing them, whatever they are. You're talking nonsense, Kirk said. This is just an alien world that must be battled. The causes are self-obvious facts of existence. No, they're not, Jason insisted. Consider for a second. When you are away for any length of time from this planet, you must take a refresher course to see how things have changed for the worse while you were gone. Well, that's a linear progression. If things get worse when you extend into the future, then they have to get better if you extend into the past. It is also a good theory, though I don't know if the facts will bear me out, to say that if you extend it far enough into the past, you will reach a time when mankind and Pyrrus were not at war with each other. Kirk was beyond speech now, only capable of sitting and listening while Jason drove home the blows of inescapable logic. There's evidence to support this theory. Even you will admit that I, if I'm no match for Pyrran life, am surely well versed in it. And all the Pyrran flora and fauna I've seen have one thing in common. They're not functional. None of their immense armory of weapons is used against each other. Their toxins don't seem to operate against Pyrran life. They're good only for dispensing death to Homo sapiens. And that is a physical impossibility. In the 300 years that men have been on this planet, the life forms couldn't have naturally adapted in this manner. But they have done it, Kirk bellowed. You are right, Jason told him calmly. And if they have done it, there must be some agency at work. Operating how, I have no idea. But something has caused the life on Pyrrus to declare war, and I'd like to find out what that something is. What was the dominant life form here when your ancestors landed? I'm sure I wouldn't know, Kirk said. You're not suggesting, are you, that there are sentient beings on Pyrrus other than those of human descent? Creatures who are organizing the planet to battle us? I'm not suggesting it. You are. That means you're getting the idea. I have no idea what caused this change, but I would sure like to find out. Then see if it can be changed back. Nothing promised, of course. You'll agree, though, that it is worth investigating. Fist smacking into his palm, his heavy footsteps shaking the building, Kirk paced back and forth the length of the room. He was at war with himself. New ideas fought old beliefs. It was so sudden and so hard not to believe. Without asking permission, Jason helped himself to some chilled water from the bottle and sank back into the chair, exhausted. Something whizzed in through the open window, tearing a hole in the protective screen. Kirk blasted it without changing stride, without even knowing he had done it. The decision didn't take long. Geared to swift activity, the big Pyrran found it impossible not to decide quickly. The pacing stopped, and a finger stabbed at Jason. I don't say you've convinced me, but I find it impossible to find a ready answer to your arguments. So until I do, we will have to operate as if they are true. Now, what do you plan to do? What can you do? Jason ticked off the points on his fingers. 1. I'll need a place to live and work that is well protected. So instead of spending my energies on just remaining alive, I can devote some study to this project. 2. I want someone to help me and act as a bodyguard at the same time. And someone, please, with a little more scope of interest than my present watchdog. I would suggest Meta for the job. Meta? Kirk was surprised. She's a space pilot and defense screen operator. What good could she possibly be on a project like this? The most good possible. She has had experience on other worlds and can shift her point of view, at least a bit. And she must know as much about this planet as any other educated adult can answer any questions I ask. Jason smiled. In addition to which, well, she's an attractive girl whose company I enjoy. Kirk grunted. Ugh, I was wondering if you would get around to mentioning that last reason. The others make sense, though, so I'm not going to argue. I'll round up a replacement for her and have Meta sent here. There are plenty of sealed buildings you can use. After talking to one of the assistants from the outer office, Kirk made some calls on the screen. The correct orders were quickly issued. Jason watched it all with interest. Pardon me for asking, he finally said, but are you the dictator of this planet? You just snap your fingers and they all jump. I suppose it looks that way, Kirk admitted. But that is just an illusion. No one is in complete charge on Pyrrus. Neither is there anything resembling a democratic system. After all, our total population is about the size of an army division. Everyone does the job they are best qualified for. Various activities are separated into departments with the most qualified person in charge. I run coordination and supply, which is about the loosest category. We fill in the gaps between departments and handle procuring from off-planet. Meta came in then and talked to Kirk. She completely ignored Jason's presence. I was relieved and sent here, she said. What is it? Change in flight schedule? You might call it that, Kirk said. As of now, you were dismissed from all your old assignments and assigned to a new department, investigation and research. That tired-looking fellow there is your department head. A sense of humor, Jason said. The only native-born one on Pyrrus. Congratulations, there's hope for the planet yet. Meta glanced back and forth between them. I don't understand. I can't believe it. I mean, a new department? Why? I'm sorry, Kirk said. I didn't mean to be cruel. I thought perhaps you might feel more at ease. What I said was true. Jason has a way, or more may have a way, to be of immense value to Pyrrus. Will you help him? Meta had her composure back and a little anger. Do I have to? Is that an order? You know I have work to do. I'm sure you will realize it is more important than something a person from off-planet might imagine. He can't really understand. Yes, it's an order. The snap was back in Kirk's voice. Meta flushed at the tone. Perhaps I can explain, Jason broke in. After all, the whole thing is my idea, but first I would like your cooperation. Will you take the clip out of your gun and give it to Kirk? Meta looked frightened, but Kirk nodded in solemn agreement. Just a few more minutes, Meta. I have my gun, so you will be safe here. I think I know what Jason has in mind, and from personal experience, I'm afraid he's right. Reluctantly, Meta passed over the clip and cleared the charge in the gun's chamber. Only then did Jason explain. I have a theory about life on Pyrrus, and I'm afraid I'll have to shatter some illusions when I explain. To begin with, the fact must be admitted that your people are slowly losing the war here and will eventually be destroyed. Before he was half through the sentence, Meta's gun was directed between his eyes, and she was wildly snapping the trigger. There was only hatred and revulsion in her expression. Kirk took her by the shoulders and sat her in his chair before anything worse happened. It took a while before she could calm down enough to listen to Jason's words. It is not easy to have the carefully built-up falsehoods of a lifetime shattered. Only the fact that she had seen something of other worlds enabled her to listen at all. The light of unreason was still in her eyes when he had finished, telling her the things that he and Kirk had discussed. She sat tensely, pushed forward against Kirk's hands, as if they were the only things that stopped her from leaping at Jason. Maybe that is too much to assimilate at one sitting, Jason said. So let's put it in simpler terms. I believe we can find a reason for this unrelenting hatred of humans. Perhaps we don't smell right. Maybe I'll find an essence of crushed Pyrran bugs that will render us immune when we rub it in. I don't know yet. But whatever the results, we must make the investigation. Kirk agrees with me on that. Meta looked at Kirk, and he nodded agreement. Her shoulders slumped in sudden defeat. She whispered the words, I can't say I agree, or even understand all that you said, but I'll help you, if Kirk thinks that that is the right thing to do. I do, he said. Now, do you want the clip back for your gun? Not planning to take any more shots at Jason? That was foolish of me, he said coldly, while she reloaded the gun. I don't need a gun. If I had to kill him, I could do it with my bare hands. I love you too, Jason smiled at her. Are you ready to go now? Of course. She brushed a fluffy curl of hair back into place. First, we'll find a place where you can stay. I'll take care of that. After that, the work of the new department is up to you. All right, that's the end of Chapter 10. We'll stop there for now. We'll get back to it next week. And we'll probably read Part 2 of The Thing of 1,000 Shapes next week as well, from Weird Tales, Volume 1, Number 1. So, yeah, tune in, check it out. And as always, thanks to Aindulmedir for letting me use his tunes. You can find him on Spotify or Bandcamp or YouTube. Today, we listened to the Winter Scriptures. So, yeah, go show him some love. He's a really nice guy, and it's very sweet of him to let me use his tunes. So, yeah. All right, folks, take it easy. Enjoy the rest of the week, and I'll see you next time.